The rain battered the cafe's windows like it had a personal grudge. Each drop a reminder of the debts piling up in Elliot's ledger. He stood behind the counter, wiping the same spot for the third time, his calloused hands moving out of habit rather than purpose. At 48, Elliot had seen enough of the world to know that trust was a luxury he couldn't afford not in this crumbling corner of Portland, Oregon, where his cafe, the last sip, was barely surviving. The bell above the door jingled, and Elliot's eyes flicked up, already bracing for another freeloader. The kind who'd nurse a single coffee for hours, hogging a table while contributing nothing but complaints about the Wi-Fi. But this time, it was different. The person who walked in was slight, with short, tousled hair and a worn denim jacket that looked like it had seen better days. They hesitated at the threshold, scanning the room as if unsure they belonged. Elliot's first thought was that they were young, maybe late 20s, but there was something in their eyes, a quiet weight that didn't match their age. "Welcome," Elliot muttered, his voice gruff from disuse. "What'll it be?" The stranger approached the counter, their hands stuffed deep in their pockets. "Just a black coffee," they said softly, their voice steady but low, like they were used to being overlooked. They fumbled with a crumpled $5 bill, sliding it across the counter with an almost apologetic glance. Elliot poured the coffee, the aroma sharp and familiar, and handed it over without a word. The stranger, Sam, as he'd later learn, took a seat by the window, staring out at the rain like it held answers they couldn't find. Something about them tugged at Elliot, though he couldn't place why. Maybe it was the way they cradled the mug, like it was the only warmth they'd felt all day. Or maybe it was the faint scar above their eyebrow, barely visible, but hinting at a story Elliot wasn't sure he wanted to know. The last sip had been his father's dream, a place where locals could gather, share stories, and feel at home. But that was before the economy tanked, before the regulars dwindled, before Elliot started seeing every new face as a potential drain. He'd inherited the cafe 5 years ago, along with a mountain of debt and a chip on his shoulder. Freeloaders. He called them people who came in, took up space, and left nothing but crumbs and excuses. He'd put up signs, no loitering, 1 drink minimum per hour. He'd even started locking the bathroom, tired of cleaning up after those who thought his cafe was a public shelter. But Sam wasn't like the others. They came back the next day, and the day after that, always ordering the same black coffee, always paying with exact change. They never lingered too long, never asked for the Wi-Fi password, never left a mess. And yet, Elliot couldn't shake the feeling that Sam was hiding something. It wasn't suspicion, exactly, just a nagging sense that their quiet presence was more than it seemed. By the 4th day, Elliot's curiosity got the better of him. "You new around here?" he asked, leaning against the counter as he refilled Sam's mug. Sam looked up, startled, their hazel eyes catching the light. "Yeah. Just passing through, I guess." "Passing through to where?" Sam's lips quirked. Not quite a smile. "Haven't figured that out yet." Elliot nodded, recognizing the dodge. He'd heard it before, from drifters and dreamers who thought Portland was some kind of promised land. But Sam didn't have the starry-eyed look of a dreamer. They carried themselves like someone who'd been running for a long time, not from the law, maybe, but from something just as heavy. Over the next week, Sam became a fixture. They'd sit by the window, scribbling in a worn notebook, their coffee cooling as they lost themselves in thought. Elliot started noticing little things, the way Sam's shoulders tensed when someone raised their voice, the way they'd glance at the door like they were expecting trouble. He didn't ask questions, though. Questions invited answers, and answers invited complications. But complications came anyway. One rainy afternoon, a man in a leather jacket stormed into the cafe, his boots leaving muddy tracks on the floor. He scanned the room, his gaze locking onto Sam. "You," he said, his voice low and menacing. "We need to talk." Sam froze, their pen hovering over the notebook. "I don't know you," they said, but their voice shook, betraying them. "Bullshit," the man snapped, stepping closer. "You think you can just disappear?" Elliot's hand tightened around the rag he was holding. He didn't know Sam's story, but he knew a bully when he saw one. "Hey," he called, stepping out from behind the counter. "You got a problem? Take it outside." The man turned, sizing Elliot up. "This ain't your business, old man." "It's my cafe," Elliot said, his voice steady. "That makes it my business." The man sneered but backed off, muttering something under his breath as he left. Sam didn't move, their eyes fixed on the table. "Thanks," they whispered, barely audible. Elliot shrugged, returning to the counter. "Don't mention it." But he couldn't let it go. That night, as he locked up, he found himself wondering who Sam was running from and why they'd chosen his cafe as their hideout. He didn't know it yet, but Sam was about to turn his world upside down, forcing him to confront the walls he'd built around his heart. The rain didn't let up, and neither did Sam's visits. Every day, they'd show up just before the lunch rush, order their coffee, and settle into their spot by the window. Elliot started to look forward to it, though he'd never admit it. There was something about Sam's quiet resilience that softened the edges of his cynicism. They weren't just another freeloader, he told himself. They paid for their coffee. They respected the space. But deep down, he knew it was more than that. One evening, as the cafe emptied out, Sam lingered longer than usual. The notebook was open, but they weren't writing. Instead, they were staring at the rain, their expression unreadable. Elliot, wiping down tables nearby, couldn't help himself. "You ever gonna tell me what's in that notebook?" he asked, half joking. Sam's lips twitched. "It's just thoughts. Poems. Mostly." "Poems?" Elliot raised an eyebrow. "Didn't peg you for a poet." Sam laughed. A soft, unexpected sound. "Yeah. Well, I don't exactly advertise it." Elliot pulled up a chair, surprising himself. "Read me one." Sam hesitated, their fingers tracing the edge of the notebook. "They're not good," they said, but their voice lacked conviction. "Try me." Sam sighed, flipping to a page near the back. Their voice was quiet but steady as they read. "I am the shadow that moves before the light, / never quite whole. Never quite right / but still I walk. Still I fight." The words hung in the air, raw and heavy, like a confession. Elliot didn't know what to say. He wasn't a man of words, never had been. But something in Sam's poem hit him square in the chest, stirring memories of his own battles, the ones he'd buried under years of bitterness. "That's real," he said finally. "You got away with words." Sam's cheeks flushed, and they closed the notebook. "Thanks. It's just how I make sense of things." "Things like what?" Elliot pressed, his curiosity overriding his usual restraint. Sam looked away, their jaw tightening. "Things like trying to be who I am when the world doesn't make it easy." Elliot didn't push further. He'd lived long enough to recognize a wound when he saw one. Instead, he stood, grabbing a fresh pot of coffee. "On the house," he said, pouring Sam a refill. It was the first time he'd ever done that. As the days turned into weeks, Elliot and Sam settled into an unspoken routine. Sam would write, Elliot would brew, and occasionally, they'd trade fragments of their lives. Elliot learned that Sam was trans, that they'd left a small town in Idaho after their family turned their back on them. They didn't go into details. And Elliot didn't ask. He didn't need to. The pain in their eyes told him enough. But the man in the leather jacket wasn't the last of Sam's troubles. One morning, a woman came in, her face pinched with anger. She didn't bother ordering, just marched straight to Sam's table. "You can't keep running," she said, her voice low but sharp. "You owe me answers." Sam's hands shook as they set down their mug. "I don't owe you anything. Claire." Elliot watched from the counter, his gut twisting. He didn't know who Claire was, but he could guess someone from Sam's past, someone who hadn't let go. He stepped forward, ready to intervene, but Sam held up a hand, their expression resolute. "I've got this," they said, their voice steadier than Elliot expected. Claire didn't stay long, but her presence left a chill in the air. When she was gone, Sam slumped in their chair, their usual composure fraying at the edges. Elliot didn't say anything, just slid a plate of blueberry scones across the table. "Eat," he said. "You look like you need it." Sam managed a weak smile. "You're not as tough as you act. You know." Elliot grunted, turning away to hide the flush creeping up his neck. He wasn't used to this caring about someone, letting them in. But Sam was different. They weren't just a customer anymore. They were someone who made him want to be better, to believe in something again. Winter settled over Portland, blanketing the city in a gray haze. The cafe was quieter now, the holiday rush replaced by a steady trickle of regulars. Sam was there every day, their notebook filling up with poems that grew bolder, more vulnerable. Elliot found himself listening more, talking more, sharing stories he hadn't told anyone in years about his father, about the wife who left him, about the dreams he'd given up on. One night, as they closed up together, Sam lingered by the door. "Why do you keep this place going?" they asked, their voice soft but curious. "You could sell it. Walk away. Why stay?" Elliot leaned against the counter, staring at the worn floorboards. "Because it's all I've got," he said finally. "This place, it's the only thing that still feels like home." Sam nodded, like they understood more than they let on. "You ever think about starting over? Somewhere new?" "Every damn day," Elliot admitted. "But I'm too stubborn to quit." Sam smiled, a real one this time, and it hit Elliot like a punch. He realized, in that moment, that he was falling for them not just as a friend, but as something more. It scared the hell out of him. He was too old, too broken, too set in his ways. And Sam deserved better than a grumpy cafe owner with a chip on his shoulder. But the heart doesn't listen to reason. Over the next few weeks, their conversations grew deeper, their silences more comfortable. Elliot started leaving little gifts for Sama fresh scone, a new pen, a scarf when the weather turned bitter. Sam, in turn, shared more of their poems, each one a window into their soul. Elliot didn't understand poetry, but he understood their courage, their quiet strength, their refusal to let the world break them. One evening, as snow dusted the streets outside, Sam reached across the table and touched Elliot's hand. It was a small gesture, but it sent a jolt through him. "You're a good man, Elliot," they said, their voice barely above a whisper. "You don't give yourself enough credit." Elliot pulled his hand back, his throat tight. "You don't know me," he said, but the words lacked conviction. "I know enough," Sam replied, their eyes locked on his. That night, Elliot lay awake, staring at the ceiling of his tiny apartment above the cafe. He thought about Sam, about the way they made him feel alive again. He thought about the walls he'd built, the ones he'd spent years reinforcing. And for the first time, he wondered if maybe, just maybe, He could let them down. Trouble came knocking again, as it always did. It was a frigid January morning when the man in the leather jacket returned, this time with another guy in tow. They didn't bother with pleasantries, just stormed into the cafe and headed straight for Sam. "You're done running," the first man said, his voice dripping with menace. Elliot was behind the counter, but he moved fast, planting himself between Sam and the men. "I told you before," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Not in my cafe." The second man laughed. A cold, ugly sound. "You gonna play hero, old man?" Elliot didn't flinch. "Try me." The standoff lasted only a moment before the men backed off, but not before the first one pointed at Sam. "This ain't over," he said, then turned and left. Sam was shaking, their hands clenched into fists. "I'm sorry," they whispered. "I didn't mean to bring this here." "Who are they?" Elliot asked, his voice softer now. Sam took a deep breath, their eyes glistening. "My brother and his friend. They don't accept me. Never have." Elliot's jaw tightened. He knew what it was like to lose family, to feel like you didn't belong. "You don't owe them anything," he said. "You hear me? Nothing." Sam nodded, but the fear in their eyes didn't fade. That night, they told Elliot everything about the small town that turned its back on them, about the threats, the violence, the years spent running. They told him about Claire, their ex, who couldn't handle their transition. And they told him about the poems, the ones that kept them sane when the world felt like it was closing in. Elliot listened, his heart breaking for them. He didn't have the words to fix it, but he had something else. He had determination to protect Sam, to give them a safe place, even if it was just a rundown cafe on a forgotten street. Over the next few weeks, Elliot became Sam's shield. He kept an eye out for trouble, made sure the cafe was a sanctuary. He even started opening early, just so Sam could have a quiet place to write before the day began. And Sam, in turn, started to open up, their smiles coming easier, their poems growing brighter. One day, Sam handed Elliot a new poem, their handwriting neater than usual. "You gave me a home when I had none/a place to rest. A place to run." Elliot read it, his throat tight. "This about me?" he asked, his voice rough. Sam nodded, their eyes shining. "You saved me, Elliot, in more ways than you know." Spring came slowly, the rain giving way to tentative sunlight. The cafe was busier now, word spreading about the little place with the best coffee in town. Elliot didn't know how it happened, but Sam had become his partner not just in the cafe, but in life. They worked side by side, their hands brushing as they passed mugs, their laughter filling the quiet moments. But the past doesn't let go easily. One afternoon, as Elliot and Sam were closing up, a car pulled up outside. It was Sam's brother, alone this time, his face a mask of barely contained rage. "You think you can just start over?" he shouted, stepping out of the car. "You think you can pretend you're someone else?" Sam froze, their face pale. But before they could speak, Elliot stepped forward, his voice calm but unyielding. "They're not pretending," he said. "They're Sam, and they're more than you'll ever understand." The confrontation was tense, but it ended without violence. Sam's brother left, his threats hollow in the face of Elliot's resolve. That night, Sam and Elliot sat together in the cafe, the lights dim, the world outside forgotten. "I don't know how to thank you," Sam said, their voice breaking. "You don't have to," Elliot replied. "You changed me, too." They sat in silence, their hands entwined, the weight of their pasts lifting just a little. The cafe, once a burden, had become a haven not just for Sam, but for Elliot, too. He'd spent years shutting people out, tired of being used, tired of being hurt. But Sam had shown him that trust wasn't a weakness. It was a gift. As they locked up that night, Elliot looked at Sam, their face illuminated by the streetlights. "You staying?" he asked, his voice soft. Sam smiled. A real, unguarded smile. "Yeah," they said. "I'm staying." And for the first time in years, Elliot felt like he was home.